This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
All right, we are live. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Great to have you all with us. Andrew Paterson, along with the CTO, Michael Remis. A very busy show today. We are going to be talking some puck. Dustin Nielson, my pal from the Lock Shop and the host of the Nielsen Show on TSN 1260 in Edmonton, is going to join us. It's been a very interesting week or so for the Oilers and their fans heading into expansion draft and free agency, Duncan Keith trade, negotiations with Adam Larson, and Dusty's been hearing all about it from fans in Edmonton. We'll get his take on what's happening out there, as well as the landscape of the NHL as we get closer to protected lists being announced on the weekend and next Wednesday's expansion draft for the Seattle Kraken. We will also look ahead to next week's NHL amateur draft. Shane Malloy, Hockey Prospect Radio, is going to join us a little bit later on in the program as well. And we're going to pack a third guest in because my pal Geoff Fienberg has been hotter than a pistol in the last month, picking winners that have been paying off big time for folks. And of course, early tomorrow morning, the first tee shots will be hit at Royal St. George's for the Open Championship, the final golf major of the year. So we'll pick Fienberg's brain and hopefully get a few winners for you as well. Speaking of the Open Championship, we made the DraftKings contest. I believe there's 8 spots left. So if you want to play with us, I know Dusty's in it, Remis is in it, many of our listeners, there's 8 spots left. It's $3 to go in. If you go to my Twitter, at Hustlerama, you'll see some tweets with the link to go directly in. Let's fill that sucker and have some fun with the Open Championship. As always, we're brought to you by our great family of sponsors: Royal Sports, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Boston Pizza, Not Autocorp, Little Brown Jug, Breezy Bend, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, Assiniboia Downs, and Cool Bet Canada. Did do a pretty extensive British Open preview with Pat Gregoire yesterday on the Cool Bet channels. If you missed those, check it out on their YouTube or on their social feeds. And as I said, Fienberg will be joining us a little bit later on. I got goosed last night at the track. We'll try and get that back on track a little bit later on today with some winners for live racing tonight at Assiniboia Downs. Let's get to it and welcome in the CTO, the brains of the operation, Michael Remis. Remo, did you watch the All-Star game last night? How about your boy Vladdy Jr., MVP?
Yeah, it was awesome. I tweeted out a picture of his, or I think I posted it on our Facebook and Instagram story, so follow us on there. But did you see his glove that he was rocking?
Oh, was that ever cool?
I've never seen a glove like this. I had pictures on it, pictures of him as a young kid in the Expos jersey with his dad while playing for the Expos. That was super cool. Hit a mammoth blast. That was a bomb. Maybe I think it was the longest home run ever in the All-Star game. I might have to confirm that, but anyways,
it's his longest of his career as well, which was, I don't know, maybe a little bit surprising. I mean, he absolutely murdered it. And you know what was ended up being a bit of a laugh, but could have been more serious, was the fact that he almost ended Max Scherzer's life with the second at bat of the game. That screaming line drive that he hit, I mean, that missed Scherzer's dome by about a millimeter. And that would have been horrible to get things going. But gave Max a little hug as he walked off after being out, and then got back up to the plate and launched an absolute nuke and won the MVP. Yeah. Pretty cool night for the Jays overall. I mean, if you're a Jays fan right now, you have to be so excited. I mean, maybe it's not happening this year, although, you know, if they could get on a bit of a run and a bit more pitching help, I think they'll be pushing for a playoff spot. But man, Reem, when you look at the core of this team and how old these players are, you know, going into next season and the season past that, I think there really is a window opening for the Toronto Blue Jays to once again contend for a World Series title.
Yeah, we know that, you see the number of all-stars that they have in the all-star game, but they're all hitters. They need some help in the pitching, relief, starting. Are there deals to be made? The July 31st trade deadline is just over 2 weeks away, and this is a dynamic roster. The hitting, can get it done, but they definitely need some help, and we'll have to wait and see, what the market is like and what trades are going on. Because there's a bit of a dogfight there in the East. I know the Yankees are having a disappointing season, but Boston up there, the Rays doing what they did. Toronto, they're 8 games back of the division, 4.5 from a wild card. They have added these additional wild card spots, so more of an opportunity to get into the playoffs than in years past.
Hey, shout out to everyone in chat. We've got a nice crew already. Say hi to some few people right off the bat. There's Wayne Jones, Destruction's in the house, WWD, Sandy and G, Jet Oil Tom is with us. Russ Lowen, while COVID presser ended just in time, might as well have rated WST when it ended. We could, that would be nice. Dr. Rusin, just fire everyone straight over to Winnipeg Sports Talk when you're done with the updates. Mitch is here from Winnipeg Hockey Talk. What up, Mitch? And speaking of Mitch, we talked earlier that he was formerly a scout with the Portland Winterhawks organization. Just saw that new Portland Winterhawks logo and the new identity for the club. Very, very sharp. That's sort of all over the internet this afternoon. Jetto, Tom, so glad to have WST to get all my sports news. Well, it's great to have you with us. But the funniest one, Remis, is from Larry Bong, who says Remo versus Vlad in the home run competition. And Jeff Kavilis mentioned in for Remo's trophy. I have to admit, you'd be a pretty big underdog, despite your decorated history in home run derbies if you're going up against Vlad.
We're almost like 7 years away from, sorry, let me polish this thing. There's some residue on the label here but 7 years from the anniversary of the American Association All-Star Media Skills Home Run Derby, where I defeated Ken Wiebe and Troy Westwood. I know Mike McIntyre was in there as well. A number of other Winnipeg media, where I came out on top in front of a packed crowd. I think it was over capacity at Shaw Parkhouse. They couldn't even...
I was one of the people there. I mean, I witnessed it with my own eyes. One of the great moments in Winnipeg sports history.
But right now, Huss, I am not in mid-season form. I played my first game of slow pitch, and you could tell that I was very rusty. So I'm not looking to do any hitting at all. I could barely hit on the infield.
Well, I know you got another game on Thursday. People will be demanding an update as to how you did coming up when it is. And speaking of Friday and Monday, if you missed this yesterday, I am going to be away, heading up to Aikens Lake. I've been talking about it all summer. Cannot wait to get out there. Remo will be holding it down for a couple days with a couple special guest hosts. Our good friend Brandon Rowicki is going to be in hosting on Friday. And the sports rabbi himself, Matt Leibel, in with Remo on Monday. So should be a lot of fun. Big thanks to those guys for keeping Winnipeg Sports Talk going while I'm gone for a couple days, and very much looking forward to that. We've got, listen, I do want to get to some of this hockey talk, and we're going to be speaking about it with Dustin Nielson coming up in just a few minutes, Reem. But an interesting signing today in the league, and I know a lot of people immediately when you see players signed, it immediately goes to how does that affect the players on my team? And of course, Brandon Carlo getting a 6-year, $4.1 million AAV contract with the Boston Bruins. An interesting number for a very talented young defenseman who's a big part of the Boston Bruins going forward. But of course, when you hear a defenseman sign a contract like that, you immediately think, what does that mean for the Winnipeg Jets as they look to ink Neil Pionk, presumably, to a long-term deal? And I'll tell you what, just straight up off the points to begin with, Neil Pionk, that's pretty much the floor for Neil Pionk. I'd have to say that you look at the production and how much he's played for the Winnipeg Jets, he's going to be looking in excess of $5 million. But at least there are some comparables right now coming out in the market. And that could be helpful, I think, to a team like Winnipeg that's looking to get one of their most important players signed going forward. Again, they do have a little bit of time on this. Neil Pionk will absolutely be protected when we go into the expansion draft next week. But it is another one of the things on Kevin Cheveldayoff's quite lengthy to-do list for this offseason.
Yeah, I think Pionk and Andrew Kopp we spoke about yesterday. So if you want to check our yesterday's show or in our videos, I did clip the one of you and Murat, chatting about Andrew Kopp yesterday, but I saw this contract for Brandon Carlo, and he's been has struggled to stay healthy. And they signed him a 6-year deal. I saw, Evolving Wild or Evolving Hockey, I forget what their Twitter is. They projected a 6-year at $4.5 million. Now he's a stay-at-home, defensive defenseman. Plays top 4 minutes. So 4.1 for 6 years. I don't know if Neil Pionk signs that long. I think it would be a bit more than that. I don't know. We'll kind of wait and see what kind of deal Pionk signs. But I mean, this is a long-term deal, so you're going to have to pay more for a guy to lock up those free agent years. So second pair D seems like, if the cap goes up, this seems like it could be a reasonable contract. And, we have him for a long time. But I think he struggled with health. That would be one thing too. But I think that's something, for all players going forward.
Now, Rob Somerville in the chat asks, Hassan Remis, who do you see as being the likely player the Kraken take from the Jets roster? Will they make a deal with Seattle to not take a certain player? We saw that happen for the Vegas draft. Of course, the Jets made a deal where Chris Thorburn was selected. They were able to keep Toby Enstrom. They ended up moving down 9 spots in the first round and giving a 3rd round pick for that. So, I mean, certainly there has been precedent to do that. And to me, listen, Cheveldayoff, I don't think really feels good about losing any of the 3 most likely players. And, we've talked about this extensively. I mean, I think on the blue line, the decision for the Winnipeg Jets is going to come down to Dylan DeMello or Logan Stanley. I personally think the Jets would be loath to lose Stanley. I think they put so much into him. I think they saw the potential that he had in year number 1. I still don't think Stanley will be available. Now, does that mean DeMello is? I'm not sure. And then there's an argument to be made that Mason Appleton, on his contract with what he's done in his young career, would be the person that would be the player that the Kraken would be taking regardless. So I think really it's about that. Now, could Cheveldayoff work some sort of a magic where, they're giving some sort of other capital or another younger player and getting them to take maybe someone that doesn't fit as much into the future plans? We haven't talked about Jansen Harkins. Sammy Niku's out there as well. But to me, I mean, I think right now, before we see these protected lists on the weekend, Reem, I really have to think that, the players that we've been talking about for the last little while, Stanley/DeMello on the blue line, if only one of those players can be protected. And certainly, I think Mason Appleton, assuming that Andrew Kopp is protected, along with Adam Lowry, we're looking at, a situation where Appleton is the most likely forward to be picked and potentially the most likely player.
Yeah, I agree. I think Appleton seems like the player they're going to lose right now. And I don't think you need to make any crazy deals to, trade them 2 players so they, give them 2 players so they don't take the one. I think if you lose Appleton, that's kind of the player that, this expansion draft is set up for you to lose. A guy who's a, maybe a 3rd line player, could be a 2nd line, young guy. I think if you lose Appleton, that's okay. And I think the Kraken would probably pick Appleton over Stanley, who's not as established. I know a lot of people, and I see it in our YouTube comments, and I see it on Twitter, really, really don't want to lose Logan Stanley. I think Appleton would be the play. And I don't think you don't need to make any crazy side deals. We saw what happened last year. None of them were, last expansion draft, none of them worked out. So I think if you're Jets, you let him take Appleton, and then we're done with that. Is that our official expansion draft stance?
I mean, I hate to lose Appleton too. I mean, listen, if you're talking about, I need to know what the cost is to keep those players. I mean, if we're talking about a couple draft picks, the problem right now for the Jets is that they only have 4 picks in this draft to begin with. I mean, they've made some other deals over the last couple of years that has taken away. And, we're going to talk about this with Shane Malloy. The value of a pick this year. I mean, is the value of a first rounder this year the same as a normal year? I mean, the challenges of scouting in the pandemic era, from my perspective, and certainly he'll know a lot better than me, I think put some real significant challenges, maybe more uncertainty when it comes to the draft this year. So maybe you'll see teams that, depending on where they are in their path of their window, being more willing to potentially trade draft capital to keep players like that. Either way, we'll figure that out coming forward. Now, Reem, I think Shane is just about good to go. I have to admit, I think I may have screwed up and told Dusty to get in at 12:20. So maybe I'll just send him a text and see if he can come a little bit later. Sound good?
Yeah, sure. That works for me.
All right, so we'll get to that. Before we do that, do want to thank our great sponsors at Royal Sports. Summer is here. The weather is going to be hot and steamy. If you're going to be out on the water, you're certainly going to want to be doing that. It's great beach toys, disc golf available. So many bikes coming in, and there's been a real worldwide bicycle shortage. So it's been great to see all the whips that they've been getting in over at Royal Sports. And of course, if you're going to get out, incredible camping gears, an official Yeti dealer as well. Some really neat things. Heck, Jets Yeti mugs if you want to support the team out on the campsite this year. And when it comes to licensed merchandise, NFL season coming up, great bomber gears. You get ready for the 5th of August. And of course, just finishing up that amazing Euro, still incredible soccer gear from the top teams and international teams from around the world. Pop on down to the GOAT of all stores, Royal Sports, 650 Raleigh and EK and 750 Pembina Highway. Also want to thank Nick and Nicky DQ. It's pushing, 34, 35. This is DQ weather right now in the Nick and Nicky group of DQs with 4 locations. DQ Niverville, DQ Northgate up on McPhillips, DQ Polo Park, and the Dairy Queen on St. Anne's are all there for you. They've got the Kit Kat Blizzard is back, the Grilled Guy Cookie Blizzard, my personal favorite, the Drumstick, and some pretty darn good hamburgers as well. Get the family down there, and if you're planning on some sort of an event, there is absolutely nothing better than bringing over a DQ cake. Be the star. You can order yours in advance. Hit them up on Instagram at DQ Manitoba and get that set up. And you'll just have to go and pick it up. And of course, our friends at Boston Pizza. I was over at BP a couple days ago, sitting on the patio with a few friends. They've got a great new summer menu to welcome you back to Boston Pizza right now with everything getting open again. And we'll see, it might be more. We're expecting new public health orders while we're on the air today. So hopefully that means getting together inside lounges and maybe a few less restrictions. Bottom line is summer is here. They're featuring the new honey dill fried chicken sandwich and the Burger Italiano. And if you're out in the patio, check out some of these amazing summer cocktails, the Bulldog Margarita Fishbowl, the White Sangria Smash, the Peachy Mojito Royale, the Galaxy Fishbowl, and of course, some cool Vizzy hard seltzers. All there at Boston Pizza right now, welcoming you back on the patio and into the restaurant at your local location. All right, as I mentioned, I think I may have screwed this up. We'll get to Dustin Nielson a little bit later on. But in the midst of all this expansion draft talk, 2 days later, there's another draft. That, of course, is the amateur draft. And always great to catch up with Shane Malloy from Hockey Prospect Radio, who joins us now to look ahead to what's going to be a very, very busy week in the National Hockey League. Shane, what's up? Thanks for doing this. How are you?
I'm doing great, gentlemen, and just patiently waiting for things to start. I'm just excited about the expansion draft as I am for the amateur. Now, I'm all about the entry draft. I think this is my 22nd draft I've covered. So I've been around for a while, aging myself a little, but it's always an exciting time. I think the expansion draft is just fascinating case study based on asset management. Like, what do you value? And like, what do you understand in terms of your risk assessment? And, I always find that interesting when you look at teams. So specifically, I heard you guys talking about it coming on to the show about, would it be Mason Appleton? Would it be, Logan Stanley? As much as I wouldn't want to lose Appleton, I think he's the player that at the end of the day, you would have to lose. I don't like losing defensemen. I think just because of scarcity and the ability if a player and a defenseman can play in your top 4. Now, Stanley is not quite there yet, but he should be able to play in your top 4 at some point. He's far more valuable than a third-line winger or a third-line center. They always are. So scarcity value, at the end of the day, I wouldn't want to lose Appleton, but you have to lose somebody. So at the end of the day, I think that makes more sense long-term.
Well, let me ask you this while we're on the topic, Shane. Listen, Stanley was maybe the most pleasant surprise of the entire season for the Winnipeg Jets at the beginning of the year. I mean, a good majority of the fan base had written this guy off as a bust before he even got an opportunity to play. And I mean, I remember I was on the draft floor. All the excitement was about Patrick Laine in 2016. And then the Jets moved up a few spots, picked Stanley with their second first-round pick. And Mark Hillier came on with me on the draft floor and said, listen, guys, this is a very different pick. This is a player that will be back in junior for 2 years. He'll play a couple years in the American Hockey League. And then 4 years down the road, we'll see what sort of player we have. Well, that fourth year just finished up. He played last season and really acquitted himself as a guy that has a future as a National Hockey League defenseman. Now, with Neil Pionk and Josh Morrissey presumably being protected, it does come down to a choice, if there's no deals to be made, between Logan Stanley, who just finished his rookie year, and Dylan DeMello, an important player for the Winnipeg Jets, a very serviceable defenseman, signed on a pretty good contract for 3 more years. Not a lot of offense, but very important for a Jets team that frankly has had some pretty significant challenges defensively. If it came down to that in your mind, Shane, if you're Kevin Cheveldayoff and there's no deal to be made, are you protecting the young player or a more established veteran?
Oh, I'm protecting Stanley. Based on asset management and their track record that they've had drafting and developing, I'll keep Stanley and keep pushing this kid forward. I thought I saw big growth in him in the past year. And that was one of the things when you're looking at that draft, and I know the Jets took a lot of heat for taking Stanley at that spot. But when you have multiple picks in that, you start to see teams do different type of risk assessment inside of that. So Laine, you'll take a player who has a higher upside and there's more risk. And then your second and third picks, if you have multiple picks in the first round, you'll see teams that will take players with a higher floor. Not necessarily a higher ceiling, but a higher floor. And they have a better understanding of where that player is going to be. He may not have the upside, but they think, based on all their collection of data, that he's going to be a player that's going to be able to slot in and have a higher percentage chance of playing 200-plus games in the NHL. Because at the end of the day, when you draft and develop, you need to hit that watermark of a couple hundred games before that player really has significant value in the NHL as a prospect.
Shane Malloy's with us, getting ready for the draft. Hey, just Dusty, if you're listening back there, I screwed up the times. I sent you a text. It's going to be a few minutes. Just check your phone if that's okay, and we'll get you on in a few minutes. Shane, back to this. I was sort of pontificating on this before, and it's been a question we have talked about a lot. Scouting in the pandemic era. How unique of a year is this from a scouting perspective? Is it more of a crapshoot this year than others because of the scouting challenges? And how different will these draft boards be around the league? Will it be more the case this year, I guess, than in a normal year, Shane?
Well, I think the biggest challenge in this draft year amongst any other is incorporating video into your analysis. There are some teams in the NHL who don't use a tremendous amount of video, and now there are other teams that do incorporate video more, but it's the type of video you use. Like, I use video all the time because I can't be everywhere, so I have to add that in. But I do not watch a full game. I'll watch a full game of an NHL game, but I will not watch a full game. I only watch, and I use Instat, which is a really great platform, and allows you to look through all the different, like, zone entries, zone exits, a variety, like 30 different video aspects. And I run through and I watch all those instead when I'm breaking down a player. But the danger is if you're a group of scouts and you don't use video, and all of a sudden you're thrown into the deep end of the pool and you have to use video exclusively or a lot. How do you break that down? Like, what video do you watch and why? And then how do you value and metric that video comparative to what you would have done live scouting? Because I don't think watching a full game on video is worthwhile. I think it's actually a waste of time because I've done it and it's just not terribly effective use of time. So which teams use video effectively is going to be the indicator of which ones have more success on the draft floor. And in this draft class, because there's less games played, there is some uncertainty. But I think the teams that have really done their homework using video properly and got as many games as they could, I think are going to have the advantage long term. And we're not going to know for 5 years. And one of the other factors is because these players didn't play limited games compared to the past, I think GMs are going to be more patient with this crop of prospects than in past years because they know they're going to have to give them an extra year. So it may be long term in their benefit. These players may get an extra year in the American League more than others. And that may make all the difference of their success rate because they're not being pushed through, especially if you're a first-round pick. Because we've seen so many first-round picks get pushed through, and it's ruined them.
Yeah, no, it is a great point. Shane, when you compare the Western League, the Quebec League, Ontario League, like players, prospects from those leagues, as well as the United States, who are the ones that were impacted the most? And is there one particular league, just because of lack of playing or games, where the prospects there are, maybe more uncertain, just simply because there's not a lot of data in their draft year?
Without a doubt, it's the Ontario Hockey League. It's not even close because they didn't play. So there are players that were top-end players that were allowed to go overseas, and they played, and they got games in Europe. The Western League played a limited amount of games, and some of those players went down into playing the USHL in Europe. So they did get some games played, but a vast majority of them did not. The Q played quite a bit. So even though it was a shortened season, I think there was enough games played to get a proper read on those players. USHL was fine. Europe was fine. So at the end of the day, it's the OHL, which is interesting because historically the OHL is the most overdrafted and overscouted league, because the majority of the scouts that cover the OHL live right beside those teams, so they can go within a drive and come back home at night. They can probably see 9 different teams. Where if you're in the Dub, you're overnighting. Like, it's so spread out. And I knew I lived in the West for the majority of my life. So I know those long road trips, and it's far more difficult to scout. So I'm really interested to see what happens in the OHL and those players.
How much analytical data is used in scouting, and how has that changed over the past, say, 10 years?
Well, it's certainly used more, and it's a balance between analytic data and statistical data, because they're two different disciplines. And that sometimes gets thrown in the wash and sort of forgotten about. So if you have somebody who has a statistics background, their focus is different. So a statistic is more deep and narrow, and analytics is more wide and shallow. Two different disciplines in terms of, from an academia standpoint and a practical standpoint. So it's about trying to marry those two together. And then it's one of the misconceptions is when people hear data, they think numbers, which is quantitative. Well, that's not true. Like, any piece of information you collect is data, where it's qualitative or it's quantitative. So it's understanding what's the value of that information. What metrics do you put upon it? How do you weight that information? And then you got to tie all that together. That's what makes it really challenging. And I think as people become more in tune to what's going on in the game, I think one of the biggest issues, and a lot of people that I know work in the analytics field is that they understand the lagging measurements, like the production. They understand how to weight and metric that pretty effectively. Their challenge is in the leading measurements, is they don't understand the inputs very well. And almost none of them, I know one, that could actually go out and scout live. With, like, if you gave them just the roster, just go out and scout these players. I'm not giving you any statistical background, no information, just go and scout it traditionally. I know one person to do that. And I think the value of understanding how to do that is you start to figure out and understand context, right? Because not all points are equal. I've seen a lot of kids in the Dub that put up like 80, 90 points and have a problem getting out of the East Coast League, because not all points are equal. So understanding the context of those situations, who their line mates are, what kind of systems they play, who are their coaches, what development they got, all that type of other information ties in. But that can all be based on analytical and statistical data as well. So that's where we're trying to push ourselves. I'm continuing on with my education in that area. And then I'm also I'm going back to university in the fall to just continue to educate myself, because it's such a huge area of discipline to understand and wrap your head around. It's a huge challenge. The teams try really hard, but it's still, in some cases, we're a little bit in our infancy stage. And in some areas, we've made some pretty good advances.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. I mean, talking to people from different teams around the league, how different teams approach analytics differently. Some sort of all in, some, dipping their toes into it. But, and that's just at the National Hockey League level. It's probably different from a scouting perspective as well, from team to team. And I mean, that is why I think, I'm not sure your perspective on this, but, the trends and the changes in scouting, in, advancement of a lot of the things that we just discussed about, combined with less data and, Ontario Hockey League not playing. I mean, this could be one of the most interesting drafts we've seen. But as you've said, we're not going to be able to have all these hot takes about who won and lost the draft on Monday morning the following weekend. It's going to take some time, Shane.
It's going to take 5 years, honestly. And I've written reports on every team's drafting development success through the salary cap era. I've been doing it for over 16 years. So I know how good everybody is in every region, every round. So, like, for instance, from 2011 to 2015, the Winnipeg Jets are the 10th most efficient team at getting players to play more than 200 games in the NHL. And if you're in the top 10, you're doing a very good job. And the Winnipeg Jets do a good job. They're very thoughtful and methodical about what they do. They're very patient. So I have a lot of time for their scouts and their scouting department. And when I talk to Chevy or to Zinger or any of their like pro scouts, amateur scouts, player development, I think I have a lot of time for them because, they're very thorough. And they're very thoughtful. Like, they don't dismiss any information. So there are some, other scouts are like analytics, and they kind of like stick their nose up. And this Winnipeg Jets team isn't like that. But they consider everything, and they don't jump all in. They want to be able to understand exactly what this means first. And then, I even do the same thing. I don't rely on one model. Like, from a statistical or analytical standpoint, I use multiple models, and then I weight which ones I think have the most value, and I sort of spread out my risk. So when I do that, when I'm like running these numbers on players, I try to spread my risk as much as I can. And I know other teams do similar things because you just can't put all your eggs in one basket. It's too challenging.
Shane, you were just talking about the Jets being in the top 10 on that criteria. Joe from Winnipeg was wondering, what team's the worst? Who has been the worst drafting team?
Well, from 2011 to 15, the reason why I have to use that is because this is as far back as I can go with this current Winnipeg Jets regime. So in that time frame, it was actually the Colorado Avalanche. Might surprise you. So their drafting actually wasn't very strong from, the salary cap from 06 to 15. They're one of the bottom teams. But what they did a really good job of when they had their first round picks, they hit hard. But what that team has done a very good job of is asset management trades. If you look at their trades and their free agencies, they've won almost every one of them. Almost every one of them. So very fortunate, and that makes up for it. But it only lasts so long. You look at the Vancouver Canucks when they were great and their drafting was horrifically bad, like when the bottom of the league, sooner or later, the bottom falls out. So you have to ensure that you're getting 1.5 to 2 players every draft that can play more than 200 games. Otherwise, you put yourself in a really tough position as a general manager trying to make up for that asset. And it's almost impossible to do.
Shane, before we get to this year's crop of draft prospects, I have to ask you about Cole Perfetti. I mean, just your thoughts on the Jets getting him at 10. And we've talked on this program, and I think, he may be, this was a terrible year for so many people. He may have benefited more than any because he was able to play in the American Hockey League. He played in the World Juniors, then played at the World Championships with men. How beneficial is this year to Cole Perfetti, and where do you see him as being an NHL prospect potentially next year for Winnipeg?
It was a massive year for him because the opportunity was to go into the American League and understand how he needed to adjust his game, understand how he had to change his pace in terms of understanding how to change his speed, and so he can create time and space for himself because he's not the fastest skater, but he's so intelligent. He understands how to move the puck effectively. You don't have to be the fastest skater to have good pace. Look at Mark Stone. Mark Stone's not the fastest player in the NHL, but he understands how to change his speed and create time and space. I think that was a huge advantage for Cole. And then he went to the World Championships and another experience. When I talked to Chevy on our show on Hockey Prospect Radio, he was so happy for that opportunity for Cole. He said it's going to make the world difference. So when he comes back into this year, he's going to understand what he needs to do and how he needs to prepare for next season. So I think it's going to give him a boost. I'm always hesitant to push guys in too quickly. I've seen too many young players look at the Buffalo Sabres, look at the Edmonton Oilers, when they pushed their guys in too quickly, it didn't turn out well for either one of those organizations. So I think the Jets are patient, but I think Perfetti shouldn't have any difficulty being a really good second line center in the NHL. So that long-term replacement for Paul Stastny and Brian Little, it's Cole Perfetti. And I think the world of the kid. He's a really hard worker. He's got some grease in his game. So I think that'll go a long way.
Well, what's interesting, you mentioned, after everything that he, experienced and was able to do this year, because of the agreement with the CHL, that's not an option for him next year, assuming that all the leagues are playing. And you're talking about NHL or OHL. Kane, you've seen this beforehand. For a player to play at the level that he did this year, is there anything for him to gain going back to the Ontario Hockey League if they don't feel that he's ready to go for the National Hockey League grind?
Well, that was one of the subjects that came up between the CHL and the NHL, is about altering that NHL-CHL agreement and allowing one player in each NHL organization able to jump into the American League if they are 19. I know the CHL wants those players back, but in all honesty, look, I'm a CHL, I grew up on the CHL. Instead of having 320s, have 6. If you want the game more competitive and have more skill, allow more 20s to play and remove the 16-year-olds. You don't really need the 16-year-olds there unless they're an exceptional player. Unless you're a Wright or a Bedard, okay. But for the most part, the 16-year-olds barely play. So have 6 20s and let the 16s go back. And then allow the CHL agreement to allow one player like a Perfetti to go and play, whether he can go in the AHL or the NHL. And I think for the Winnipeg Jets, the best thing they ever did was move their farm team into Winnipeg so that all the staff, development staff, coaching staffs on both sides are together all the time. And they're constantly discussing things and evaluating things. And there's no miscommunication. It's going to long-term, it's going to be a tremendous advantage. Them, Toronto Maple Leafs, Vancouver now, San Jose, any team that's within an hour and a half drive of their farm team, it's a huge advantage over everybody else. So I don't think it's any benefit for Cole to go back to the OHL. I don't think it's any benefit at this point. So I'm not that I want to throw him into the deep end, but they're going to have to find a way they may have to bring him into the NHL and insulate him until he's ready, fully ready.
Yeah, that's certainly been the conversation that we've had in that, it's certainly not anything that they would have to do, but you just wonder from a development standpoint, how much is left to gain to go back to the Ontario Hockey League after everything that he did last year. It'll be an interesting topic, one that we'll be definitely following going into training camp. As far as next Friday goes, Shane, big picture, how would you qualify the talent in this draft? Is it a really strong draft class, sort of in the middle, weaker? Overall, talking about the top prospects, where are we at?
I'd say overall it's average. So if you look at the historical data from the salary cap era, because I think everything's changed since the salary cap era in terms of drafting and developing. So if you look at that time frame, on average, 56 players will play more than 200 games in an average draft class. So I think in terms of depth, it's going to be around 56. So it's going to be average. Quality, that is the uncertainty, only because there's a lot of players who didn't play a lot of games. So there's some uncertainty of where projecting their floor and ceiling. I think that's going to be a challenge. So I think what ends up happening in these situations is two things are going to happen. Either the majority of the NHL teams will give these prospects more time and more development, which will help their upside, or they'll go business as usual, and it may restrict the players' upside so that we may end up having more second and third line players, forwards, and more third and fourth, number 3 and 4 defensemen, instead of having maybe the occasional 2, the occasional first line player. And there's going to be stars. Some players are going to come out of here, whether it's like a William Eklund or a Kent Johnson. There's going to be these dynamic players that come out and end up being superstars. Happens in every draft. So it's just unsure of who that's going to be. Because honestly, I can't answer that for you. I wish I could.
You'd be making a lot of money for an NHL team if you knew all the answers before they happen. That's the game of scouting. When you look at your list, and I'm sure you've perused some of the other lists out there, is there less consensus this year because of this draft and everything that we've talked about beforehand, or is that just sort of par for the course?
Honestly, consensus is death. Because the difficulty is there's only one independent scouting source that I trust personally, and that's hockeyprospect.com. So that's run by Mark Edwards. My co-host Brad Allen is their head scout. Jerome Brube, he's their other head scout. He's based out of Quebec. For my money, if I had to rely on an independent, it's hockeyprospect.com. So if any of your listeners are out there looking for a draft guide, I'm not kidding. I pulled up theirs a few days ago. It's so comprehensive. They've done an excellent job. I'm actually really impressed. I talked to them yesterday and I said, guys, you did a really good job. It's like, now I don't always agree with their rankings. Now we both have different value systems for what I value more than they do. So certain playing styles I value more. There are certain types of defensemen I value more, certain forwards I value more because of scarcity. So that's what I was talking when we got to that, Appleton versus, Stanley. Well, scarcity, you're going to take the defenseman. How many good top four defensemen are there? Not many in the NHL. So, scarcity dictates that you take that value because it's more valuable. So in terms of lists, I end up having more. My power forwards are up a little higher. Offensive defensemen are up a little higher. Yes, there may be a risk attached to that, but that ends up happening when I run my models. And I built a system where it does my ranking for me. So it helps me take some of my bias out of it, because that's the most dangerous thing. I built my own systems to take away some of my biases, because everybody has them. It doesn't matter who you are. So you just try to recognize them and reduce that as much as you can. So if I'm looking at the difference between my list and say hockeyprospect.com's, there will be a few players that I have up higher than they do, but they have goaltenders quite high. And that's mostly because of Brad Allen. He's a goaltending guy, so he's much more comfortable in grading goalies. I am not. Unless you're a Steven Valiquette or a Brad Allen or somebody like that, or a Brian DeCord, how are we supposed to figure out what this 17, 18-year-old goalie is going to do? It's voodoo. Honestly, it is, because it's so technical that it's its own skill set in itself. So to me, when I speak to those type of people, it's like I'm a kid in a candy store. I can't get enough of it, because I'm trying to figure it out myself and just get to a level where I'm not embarrassing myself, right? I don't know if he's doing his seat cut properly. I don't know if his T-push or his micro adjustments when he shuffles is what it should be, or exactly where his blocker and hands needs to be. I can't tell you that. So, but I'm honest. I'll tell you, I don't know, right? So I can watch. Oh yeah, he saved the puck, but did he look awkward? Did his feet shuffle? I got to find, I have to find somebody to help me with that, and I do.
Shane Malloy's with us, Hockey Prospect Radio. Shane, let's say you've just had a job change, and all of a sudden you're in charge of the Buffalo Sabres. You're on the clock. Who are you picking number one?
I would take Owen Power. And the reason being is, one, is scarcity, and two, especially if they end up trading, Reinhart and Eichel and Ristolainen away, I don't understand. I don't know what assets they're getting back. So at the end of the day, is you look at Berniers, you look at Eklund, certainly, their potential there to be number one. If someone took him number one, I wouldn't bat an eye. Edmondson there's some potential there for taking him number one. At the end of the day, I think Owen Power is the safest pick. He has the highest floor. I don't think he's going to be any worse than a D3, and he should be a D2 for sure. So he should play on the top pairing. But will he run the number one power play? I don't think so. Will he be on the second power play unit? Sure. You sort of look at, I don't like making comparables, but sort of like a Johnson out of Columbus, out of Colorado, Eric Johnson. He was drafted first overall. Kind of that type of defenseman. He's going to get you 40 points. He's going to play in a lot of different roles. He's going to eat a lot of minutes. But is he dynamic? No. But he has really high level hockey sense. Big body, can skate. He'll play you 25 minutes a game, no problem. In his throughout his career, he barring injury, he could probably play 15 years for you, no problem. So at the end of the day, I'll take Owen Power.
Okay, last one for you, Shane. Before we go, of your first round prospects, is there a couple players that you're particularly high on that have risen for you that maybe you think whoever gets them will be getting a great value wherever they're picked?
Tyler Boucher might end up being that player, only because he's a power forward style player, and there's so few of them in the draft. It's scarcity. Look around the league and pick out who are the power forwards, and then how valuable are they? Then how hard is it to get them? Like, how hard is it to go get a Tom Wilson or a Matthew Tkachuk or a Brady Tkachuk or those style of players? So if he's down somewhere in the end of that first round, at 25 to 35, that's a guy that I would seriously consider taking, because if you can be patient with him, like, those type of players are rare and they add value to your organization. So especially if your team has multiple picks. So I'd be interested to see where he goes.
Shane, this has been such an awesome conversation. Thanks so much for doing this. Where can people hear the program and get more of your content leading into the big day on Friday the 23rd?
Well, part 3 of our draft preview show. So we've done 4 hours already. The last 2 hours are this Saturday and Sunday. So they are 7 to 9 Eastern Standard Time AM, then 11 to 1 Eastern Standard Time. Then I believe again it's on at 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So you got 3 times on Saturday and then 3 times on Sunday.
Well, enjoy the next couple of weeks. It's going to be a lot of fun for fans, and I know this is the big time for scouts. It's exciting, and I know we can't wait to get through what's going to be a wild few weeks of the NHL offseason. Thanks so much for doing this, Shane. This was a great chat.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All the best. There he is, Shane Malloy. Follow him on Twitter at Shane Malloy. You can listen to Hockey Prospect Radio on Sirius XM NHL Radio, and I will certainly concur with what he just said. HockeyProspect.com, all the draft shows that we've done. Amazing, amazing information as we get ready for the picks coming up a week from Friday. All right, we're going to talk some more hockey coming up. We will have some more British Open chat. Fienberg will join us in about half an hour. But first up, big shout out to our friends at Not Autocorp for their amazing support of Winnipeg Sports Talk since day one. Thinking about a new ride? Well, why not get into the vehicle of your dreams at a great price with the help of the Not team? Pop down and see them at Waverly and McGillivray. Amazing facility, art in the back as well, but it's the vehicles that are the real stars of the show, including a number of Teslas. They've been a Tesla leader in Winnipeg for a long time. And if you're thinking about moving out of a lease that you're in right now or another vehicle, talk to them about their very successful consignment program to help you get maximum value for your current vehicle. They'll also service you with the Red Seal technicians and do detailing as well. It's all there at Not Autocorp, Waverly and McGillivray, or find out more at not.ca. Made a couple stops last night, and I could not help but see a lot of people enjoying 1919s and, of course, the new Little Brown Jug Summer Lager. And right now, it's not only available at your local beer store, it's not only available via home delivery, easier than ever at littlebrownjug.ca, but the tap room is also open. You can get together with your friends again. We'll get new health rules coming up a little bit later on this afternoon, but we know we can hit the patios with friends, and the tap room and patio on William Avenue at Little Brown Jug HQ is a must-do if you haven't been there already. Pop down and see it, and check out the website as well. I've seen, they've got great social media for Little Brown Jug. They've been out at Victoria Beach. They were at the Wosley Farmers Market yesterday. So check out the events page and see where they are in the community. You might be able to pop up and kill a couple birds with one stone. You're out there, garden center visits as well on the weekend. It's all there at the website at littlebrownjug.ca, and pop down and see them on William Avenue. And we're going to talk some golf coming up with Fienberg a little bit later on. But Breezy Bend powers all of our golf coverage, and we got one more major to go. British Open gets going late tonight. As I mentioned, still a few spots in our DraftKings contest, so get to my Twitter at Hustlerama and get a spot there. And if you're thinking about a great home for you and your family golfing next year, think about Breezy, an amazing junior program, great programs for the ladies, for the men, and just a phenomenal course with a great patio and great people. breezybend.ca for more information on how you can get onto next year's waiting list. All right. Fresh off of a Wednesday edition of the Lock Shop, we welcome in my guy, the host of the Nielsen Show, and my partner on the Lock Shop, the one, the only, Dustin Nielson, who hopefully we'll see back in a CFL broadcast booth as well coming up in August. Dusty, what's going on, man? Long time no talk. How are you?
I'm just sitting here tweeting out links to podcasts, buddy. That's media in 2021. I've been doing it for like 40 minutes, but we're good to go.
You got it. Folks, if you haven't already checked out the Lock Shop and you're listening on the podcast, simply go in and type in Lock Shop and check it out. We're going Wednesdays for the rest of the summer. We'll get back to 2 episodes a week into NFL season. We'll be talking CFL. We did a big show today on the golf, as well as what I did yesterday with P. Greggy. So there's lots to get to right now, and a lot of fun. But I have to ask you, Dusty, before we talk about everything going on around the National Hockey League. I mean, I often will check out your show in the morning, certainly follow you on Twitter. The reactions from Oiler fans on some of these off-season moves have been unbelievable. I mean, I guess I should have expected this when I saw what you had to deal with when Devon Shore got re-signed to a 1-year, $850,000 deal. But take us through the ups and downs of last week for the Oiler Nation and the acquisition of Duncan Keith, when apparently they were the only player that he would be willing to go to. A team.
Yeah, buddy, I've said it multiple times. Like, this offseason is going to ruin Edmonton. Like, it just is. There's gonna be nothing left. It's insane right now, from Shore and then to Nugent Hopkins, which overall the response to the Nugent Hopkins thing was pretty good. But the Duncan Keith storyline has been absolutely insane for the last week. I mean, you hear that. I mean, there was a time when if a guy like Duncan Keith, even with his poor analytics last year, wanted to come to Edmonton, we'd all be losing our mind and being like, yes, they like us. They really, really like us. But that wasn't the case with this one. Obviously, the online Oilers Twitter sphere is very, very pro analytical approach, right? Like, that's just how it's become here in Edmonton now. And you see some of the charts that have been tweeted out about Duncan Keith, and this is before the trade was even made. People are like, oh, no, I can't do this. Like, they just can't do this. And it got to the point where, you know, I'd come around on the idea of bringing in a guy with all of his experience, but we always thought that the Hawks would have to retain something, because in a world where Chicago has one of their greatest players in franchise history say, hey, look, had a good run here, but I want to go. I want to be closer to family. I want to go to the, Western Canada, Pacific Northwest, whatever. 5 teams, essentially. And Edmonton's my number one choice. Well, to me, if you reach out, and they had, obviously Bowman reaches out. Jerry Johansson, who's Keith's agent now, is an Edmonton guy. He lives here, so he chats with Ken Holland. To me, if I'm Ken Holland in that situation, you're in the driver's seat now. Like, they've come to you and said, hey, man, older Duncan Keith wants to come play for you right now. So for me in that situation, if somebody comes to me and wants something, I kind of dictate the terms, and the terms that I would have dictated would have been, yeah, that's cool. We'll pay him $4 million. You guys keep $1.5 million. And I think that's what most people thought would happen. This trade actually broke as we were doing our 2 Guys and a Goalie podcast on Monday. And we sat there in awe for about 15 minutes being like, has the amount retained come out yet? Has the amount retained come out yet? And it ended up being nothing, and people lost their minds. But there are, like any deal, man, there's pros and cons to this. The con is you took on the full cap at 5.5. The pro is that your group, and we saw what happened against Winnipeg. This is a group that doesn't know how to win in the playoffs yet. And whether he can be a key contributor to winning in the playoffs now, or can at least provide, somebody to talk to that's actually been through something of substance in an NHL playoff, I think there is some value there. Plus, he's not going to be playing 23 minutes a night. He's going to be playing behind Darnell Nurse. So the reaction's been all over the place. I mean, yeah, we can talk about everything else, but that's what's going on with Keith right now, at least.
Well, I said on the program that I think that there's going to be fodder for some very, very freezing cold takes on this trade, because, to be honest, I think Duncan Keith goes in, makes the Oilers better. I think that he'll be, and it's easy to focus on his analytics from last year. And listen, I totally buy into it. I respect it. I use it. And a year is a pretty good, don't talk to me about a guy's analytics in a 2-game series on the weekend or something like that. It's a big picture to me. However, I think what this taught us is that, and I mean, we're in this business, we've been connecting with fans, we do tons of it on social media. And the people that are really active on social media are a little bit of a different breed, I think, from the average hockey fans. And when you just, you open up your inbox and everything is crushingly negative, I think that sort of makes us think that that's the way all fans are. And then I heard you guys open up the lines, and you probably had 60% to Oiler fans that are like, I guess, it would be nice if they took some money, but they're happy to have this player there and do think they make it better. And it's a very interesting dichotomy between what you just read on your social media feed and then talking to average fans or opening up the phone lines like you did earlier this week.
It was bizarre. And this is probably the best example that I've seen of it, man. Like, ever. I've been doing the show for 12 years. Like, online, this was described as an absolute disaster. People calling for Ken Holland to lose his job because he couldn't get them to retain $1.5 million. Like, they didn't even really give up too much to get him. It all comes down to $1.5 million bucks, one way or the other in this situation. So before we went on the air the morning after, I looked over at Hernan, who's working with me this week, and I said, well, best of luck. Here we go. And I hammered the inbox. I opened up the phone lines. And I'd say the majority, not a huge majority, but I'd probably put it at like a 65-35 split of positive, takes from people saying, you know what? I know it's not ideal. Boy, I sure would have liked them to get the Hawks to keep something or take a Kyle Turris off your hands the other way. But in the end, this is a guy who in this situation, Duncan Keith, I don't think Duncan Keith can roll into a bunch of different situations and make as positive his impact as he could possibly make here with an Oilers team they've been really good for the last two regular seasons. Like, getting to the playoffs in a horrible division next year won't be an issue. Whether Duncan Keith's awful or not, they're going to be in the playoffs in the Pacific next year. It's a matter of getting to the postseason and having somebody who's been there and actually been a part of something. Like James Neal, sure. He'd been to Cup finals. I get it. Alex Chason won a Stanley Cup, but barely even played in the Stanley Cup final. That's it. Like, that's all they had. So I think in a world where, and I used to be very, like 7 years ago, you take your Corsi and shove it. Like, that's how I was. I've come around a lot on it. There's certain aspects. There's a few stats that I think are really important, and there's others that I really don't care about. But I do think that because of that, we've also forgot how important in sports experience and leadership and work ethic and in just being a veteran in a room. I think we've forgotten about how important that is too. And there has to be a fine balance. And sometimes one side is a little bit more vocal than the other.
Well, you know what? And the reason why I'm buying Duncan Keith stock going in, was the interview. He sounded like he's a guy that has heard a lot of this and definitely feels like he has something to prove coming in, and obviously looks at this roster and realizes there's a lot of potential in that room.
Yeah, I'd say, and there is. If you're Duncan Keith sitting there going, well, where could I go? At least let's just say in the West, in the Pacific Northwest, where can I go where my skill set and what I have left in the tank could fit perfectly? And the Oilers have a gaping hole right behind Darnell Nurse. And if you're Duncan Keith, you've been Darnell Nurse for the last 12 years. You know exactly what he's going through. You can slide in, you can support him. The one thing, like, from a positive perspective, I don't know what's going to happen with Keith on the ice. I'm going to do this weird thing, Huss, where I watch him play with the Oilers for about 6 weeks and actually get a feel for how it is, as opposed to just jumping the gun right now. But the one thing I really like about this deal is that
that's not how it works, by the way. That's not how it works.
I'm going to watch him play. It's nuts. I know. But it's only 2 years. He's got 2 years left on this deal. And on the left side, two of their top prospects in the organization are Broberg and Samorukov, left shot defensemen, who should be ready within 2 years. And they could have Duncan Keith somewhere in the organization mentoring him for these next 2 years. So the timeline here actually makes some sense from an Oilers perspective. But I just, like, today in Edmonton, man, like, Ryan Rishaug said that the Oilers and Adam Larson are talking. They're talking. And I had people on Twitter being like, oh, so the Oilers are going to re-sign Adam Larson and let Ethan Bear go in expansion. I'm like, guys, let's just relax a little bit here. First of all, that would be a horrible move. Second of all, it hasn't even happened yet and likely won't. And people are already ripping Ken Holland for something that hasn't even happened. It's an interesting year.
Adam Larson needs to chill. He needs to explore all of his options as an unrestricted free agent. I know there's a few teams, one in particular, that could really use a pretty solid veteran guy on the right side.
Philly, right? Is it Philly?
Yeah, Philly. Well, in all seriousness, Larson, forever. I mean, Remis still calls him Mr. 1-for-1 from the Taylor Hall trade back in the day. I mean, he really has turned into, I mean, he's not a spectacular guy by any stretch of the imagination, but a pretty reliable, steady player on a blue line that could help a lot of teams' back ends.
Yeah, he hasn't played on 4 teams in the last 2 years, so he's got that going for him. Like from an Oilers perspective, they need him. Like, I didn't think we'd ever get to a spot. Even when he came in, he played really well in that playoff run in 2017. I didn't think we'd get to a spot where you're saying the Edmonton Oilers need Adam Larsson. But Adam Larsson, to me, is in a little bit of a driver's seat here with this contract, because obviously if they sign him, he's playing with Duncan Keith. I think Larsson's exactly what Keith needs at this stage of his career, basically a Seabrook light, essentially. And if you're Adam Larsson right now, you look at the Oilers, and the Oilers have Ethan Bear and Evan Bouchard on the right side, and Bear is more developed than Bouchard. Bouchard has higher upside than Ethan Bear, but neither of those two guys are ready to handle the heavy minutes that Adam Larsson needs. That's why we're not talking about Tyson Barrie much in this market right now. Like, we're talking about Adam Larsson because, I mean, you kind of laid it out, right? Shot D-men. There's not a ton of them with high stock right now that will be free agents this year. So Adam Larsson's a little bit of a driver's seat. I've been told that it's kind of a term thing right now. Like, I think he's okay with where they're sitting numbers.
What's it going to take to get him done? I mean,
I think he'd sign right now if it's a 5-year deal. If it's a 5-year deal, I think he'd boom, done, 3.8, 5 years done. I could see the Oilers wanting to do a 3-year deal. So maybe if they settle on 4x4, like maybe it's a $16 million deal for the next 4 years. And I'd be okay with that. Like, he was really good this year, man. And he's a big part of the core here. He really likes playing here as well. But if you're an unrestricted free agent where you look at the rest of that right shot market, and after Dougie Hamilton goes, your phone's going to be ringing off the hook, I'd be tempted if I was him to wait it out and see, just to even if you wanted to come back, even to milk another 500,000 out of the Oilers once you hit the open market. I mean, that might not be the worst plan in the world for the player. I know anybody who's a fan of the team is going to hate him saying this, but that might not be the worst idea for the player.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, we'll get to free agency in a couple weeks because there's so much happening over the course of the next week with the expansion draft and the draft. But a player like Adam Larsson, if he does get to market, I know he's going to be getting calls from a few teams because, well, as I said, there's one right here that absolutely needs an upgrade on the right side of the of defense. And, you know, there's a lot of splashy forwards. You know, there's the berries that are out there, but I think what certainly a team like Winnipeg is looking for is less a guy that's going to be dynamic and running your power play than a guy that you can get out there, put on the blue line for 24, 25 minutes a night and know that, you know, you're going to get a big upgrade when it comes to the number one job of defenseman. And that, of course, is defending.
Well, and within the Oilers organization on the right side, I mean, if you're looking at style of defenseman they need as opposed to style of defenseman they have, Barrie had a phenomenal season. I mean, if the Oilers had a ton of cap space and Tyson Barrie was willing to take like a 3-year deal, have at her, bring him back. He fit in really well in that power play. But Evan Bouchard is supposed to be the next Tyson Barrie here at Edmonton. The guy's put up huge numbers wherever he's gone. He's going to need a little bit of time, which is why you need Adam Larsson to kind of solidify Ethan Bear, who's still up and down early in his career. And to be honest with you, we really don't know what Bouchard is right now. We know what he's projected to be, but we don't know what he is right now. So the Oilers desperately need Adam Larsson back. If they don't have Adam Larsson back, that right side, I don't care if you have Duncan Keith playing 30 minutes a night and he's playing like he used to play when he was winning Norris trophies. If your right side is anchored around Bear and Bouchard, there's going to be some significant growing pains. And that's why I think they're going to get something done with Adam Larsson, because you can't go out and give Duncan Keith 2 years and think that you're in go for it now mode and then roll in with a rookie and Ethan Bear on your right side. Like, you just can't do that.
You know, here we've been talking about the expansion draft as it relates to Logan Stanley, a very hot topic in Winnipeg after his rookie season, could be exposed. Dylan DeMello, important player on that blue line. And we've talked with Shane Malloy about the scarcity and the importance of defense. And then, of course, Mason Appleton up front, who I think has turned into a very solid player. And, you know, the Jets would be loath to lose them. But it sort of looks like, unless a deal's made, one of those guys is gone. What are the big expansion draft topics around your show and the Edmonton Oilers going into next week?
Well, I think you just created one. Should the Oilers trade for Mason Appleton? maybe that's something I'll be doing on my show. All right, so basically it comes down to this. I mean, their expansion list is pretty much set. I mean, they don't really have a goalie, so they're going to go with Stuart Skinner, who's like the top prospect in the organization. I'm still not too sure what he becomes. And then on the blue line, it's Nurse, it's Bear, it's Duncan Keith now. And then up front, it's McDavid, Draisaitl, Nuge, Jesse Puljujarvi, my boy, on a protected list now. Can you believe it? And then Kyler Yamamoto, probably Josh Archibald, who's a very good utility forward for the Oilers, on a good ticket, kills penalties. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to them upgrading and then having to expose him, but right now he get one of the spots. And then everybody seems to think it comes down to Zach Kassian, who's got 3 years left at 3.2, hasn't moved the needle since he signed that contract, or Tyler Benson, who's their highest scoring player in the American Hockey League, but he's 23. There's some doubts about whether he'll ever be able to play in a top 6 role in the National Hockey League because of his skating. So that's going to drive Edmonton for 3 days here, buddy. Kassian or Benson, it's already torn everybody apart. It's insane.
Well, I mean, considering all the hubbub around not retaining any salary, might it not be a good thing if Kassian got picked up in the expansion draft, opening up that room?
That's the one thing that you would look at. I mean, I think overall from Kassian, if Kassian was making $2 million and was inconsistent as he's been, but can still bring his A game once in a while and really make an impact on a hockey game, I think you'd probably keep him. I think it would be tempting right now to say, hey, you can spend that 3.2 mil. Let's say it's a different type. Like when Kassian's going, there's not a lot of guys like Kassian. I'm not saying better than Kassian, but there's not a lot of guys like Kassian, right? But he just hasn't been going. So can you take that 3.2 mil if Seattle was to take him? I'm not even sure they would if he was available. But can you take that 3.2 mil and go sign Joel Armia or something along those lines, right? Like a good player, a player who's better than Kassian consistently, but is different when Kassian's going. So the Oilers are in a spot where it's going to be Kassian or Benson that'll be exposed. And then like Chris Russell, Dominic Cahoon, Jujhar Khaira. Like Seattle's not getting a really good player from Edmonton here, no matter who it is. So I'm wondering how Seattle uses this Edmonton piece, whatever they get, in maybe another deal, or, they just take Benson and leave him in the AHL for another year or two. Who knows?
Yeah. The Kassian's fascinating. I mean, listen, if you can't get your head into the game, playing with Connor McDavid, like what's it going to be like playing for an expansion team? Like, I mean, if I'm Ron Francis, I guess there is some things that Kassian brings to the table that, all teams want, but the inability to really rely on a guy and never really know where his head's at, probably not exactly the way you want to start a brand new team.
What's interesting, you're right. But like a brand new team, probably not a great fit. I wonder if somebody would say, hey, we could use a Kassian type to go up against Tom Wilson.
That's a great point.
And then say, can you pick them, send them to us, and we'll give you a draft pick or something. Like there might be something along those lines. I think that would be more attractive. Kassian's interesting because prior to this past year, he scored 15 goals in back-to-back seasons. Now, he was given an opportunity to play with Connor McDavid at 5-on-5 there, and he managed to turn it into a $12 million contract. And I don't, this shouldn't be an excuse. And if it is, it's a pretty sad one. But I do think Kassian's a guy who's driven by the energy of a crowd. And he hasn't played in front of a crowd for the exact amount of time that he struggled since signing his new contract. So there's a part of me that goes, if Rogers Place is rocking at the beginning of next season, maybe he gets some of that jump back. It shouldn't be the case. You're a pro. You should be out there bringing that game every night. But I do think that plays a small part of it, even if it shouldn't.
Dustin Nielson is the host of the Nielson Show on TSN 1260 in Edmonton. My co-host on the Lock Shop, available weekly on your favorite podcast feed. Big news yesterday in the league. There was a lot of it, but the Parise buyout, not that surprising. The Ryan Suter buyout stunned me. And, now we're hearing that Nashville might have Matt Duchene available. What do you make of this? Is this an example of this cap squeeze that we knew was coming out of the pandemic in the NHL, that we might see some players on big money, longer term contracts available to Seattle, and some teams biting the bullet like Bill Guerin did, making those phone calls to Parise and Suter and tell them that they were getting bought out
and getting hung up on by Ryan Suter.
That's amazing.
But just quickly on the Minnesota thing, and then something Frank Seravalli said to me earlier in the week I can hit on, but the Minnesota thing, I cannot believe that they are going to have $14 million in dead cap space.
It's just wild.
What's it like 4 million combined and then 12, 14, 14. Like, I cannot believe that they sat down as an organization and said, yep, that's 18% of the cap. I did the math on my show this morning. 18% of the salary cap at 81.5% will be dead cap space for the Minnesota Wild. I don't understand it, but the interesting thing that Frank said, because I think for the longest time, I know I was guilty of it on my show. I said, the league's going to learn from the mistakes that they made when Vegas came in, and everybody just sort of bent over and was like, here, you take Jonathan Marchessault and we'll give you Riley Smith. Like, it was unbelievable. I didn't think we'd go through that again. So I brought that up with Frank on Monday, and Frank goes, it's actually starting to lean towards that being the case again. And the main driver behind it is, of course, something none of us expected 18 months ago, and that's a flat cap. So I think the flat cap is going to drive people to some decisions that we might view as a little bit crazy. But at the same time, I mean, you're just trying to survive here. But like, what Frank said, though, doesn't make any sense with the Minnesota Wild thing. Like, it's a flat cap and you've screwed yourself to the point of 12, 14, 14. For like, that's a 3-year stretch. That could be a cup window for all you know for some teams. So,
and Suter can still play. I mean, like, I get it. Parise was in and out of the lineup, and was making way too much money for a fringe player, which is what he turned into. Ryan Suter's not that guy. Like, I can't wait to see what he ends up signing for. And your point about the Wild and the cap is right. I mean, 2 years and 3 years in, they're getting dinged $14 million plus a year. They get $10 million in cap savings this season, but that's about it. And then they are going to be paying the price. And, maybe they had to do this because it's an organizational priority to make sure they can get Kaprizov signed. He was just on the 1-year deal and he needs a new contract this season. But, the Parise thing I got, but to double down and do it with Suter as well. And watch Chuck Fletcher, who signed those guys to deals. I guarantee you Chuck Fletcher is going to be calling Ryan Suter to see if he might want to show up in Philly.
Guaranteed. Philly was another team that was apparently interested in Larson, so maybe that changes it now. All I can think about with Billy Guerin is that gif of the guy walking with his 2 huge balls. Like, that's basically what this is. Like, it's... Yeah, I mean, the Kaprizov thing, and that would be your priority, right? Like, you have to keep Kaprizov around. Whatever that dude wants, you got to keep him happy. He's transitioning your franchise into significance and relevance right now. But it's such a big price to pay. Like, they must love Kaprizov and Matt Dumba. Like, that's it. They just love those two guys, and they've decided to pay $14 million to nobody for 3 years on their salary cap. It's bizarre. There's been a few things that have kind of blown my mind away so far in this offseason.
Hey, just before we go, and I know on the Lock Shop, when we get together next week, we'll really dive into more CFL talk and some props and season bets. But what's the vibe in and around the newly named Elks as training camp's going on? By the way, everyone, Dusty single-handedly moved the Trevor Harris line at 11-1 down to 6-1 on Harris to lead the CFL in passing yards. But new look, new team, it's a lot of excitement or what?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of excitement. I mean, the players are all raving about the swag and the helmet. So look good, play good, right? They're going to be great this year. I think, isn't the total like 5.5 wins for the Elks? Yeah, so there might be a little bit of disrespect there. But Trevor Harris, like, offense, I don't know what this defense is going to be this year, but offensively, they should be rather incredible. I mean, you brought Darrell Walker back in. He was excellent when it was a while ago now, but he was excellent when he was here. You've got Greg Ellingson still. You've got Monty Edwards. Like, those are your 3 top receivers for Trevor Harris, who's now working with Elizondo, who was his OC in Ottawa 2 years ago. This guy threw for 5,000 yards with the Redblacks. So the Elks offense should be incredible, which is great. We're going to go watch a lot of entertaining football. And you know what? The buzz around the team a little bit has been nice too, just from a fan base perspective. I've had people texting into the show. I've had people tweet me being like, I've been thinking about season tickets for a while and I decided this is the year. Some guy texted in and said, I got season tickets for my entire family, 2 kids, less than $600 every single game, all in for the season. And it's just, that's very affordable. Now you can't go to a movie 8 times for $600 with a family of 4. So I hope that not just the Elks, but the entire CFL can kind of create this buzz coming back here. And I think in Edmonton, we're starting to see that a little bit.
Well, dude, I'm looking forward to talking CFL with you. Looking forward to seeing you back in the booth and cannot wait for August 5th when the Bombers and Ticats get it on. Great to talk to you again. Awesome lock shop today. Have a nice little vacay, and we'll talk to you next week, buddy.
Thanks for having me, buddy. Anytime.
There he is, Dustin Nielson at Nielsen1260 on Twitter. If you're not following him already, you definitely should. You can actually go there and watch today's episode of The Lock Shop. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to The Lock Shop on your favorite podcast feed and get in the DraftKings contest. Still a few spots left for the Open Championship. Speaking of the Open Championship, we're going to get into a little bit of British Open chat with Geoff Fienberg coming up in just a couple of minutes. In the meantime, big shout out to our friends at Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge. Incredible fly-in fishing vacation spot here in Manitoba. You can get on the water in about 2 hours from the city of Winnipeg, and that's exactly what I am doing on the weekend. I am so excited. Big thanks to Brandon Rowicki, who's going to be filling in along with Remis on Friday, and the sports rabbi himself, Matt Leibel's going to be in on Monday. Should be a heck of a lot of fun. If you want to find out more about Aikens Lake, you can see the beautiful scenes if you're watching with us on YouTube. Go to aikenslake.com or find out more on Twitter. Hit up our friend Pitt Turan at Aikens Lake, and you can get out there. Still some availability that have been opened up by the borders still being closed, and so many of their normal American customers not being able to get into Canada. And of course, Assiniboia Downs live racing is back tonight. We will get to our picks at the end of the program. But in the meantime, and I guess we're going to be hearing about these new restrictions or loosened restrictions. I would hope and imagine that may mean we'll be able to get back out to the track very soon. We'll do a Winnipeg Sports Talk night at some point this season. But in the meantime, you can make a reservation in the Terrace Dining Room for live racing by calling Assiniboia Downs or going to the website at asdowns.com. All right, great stuff with Dusty, and Shane Malloy was really interesting. Remo, just before we get Fienberg in, I know he'll join us in a couple minutes here. I really enjoyed the conversation with Shane Malloy, and I know we're kind of be focused on the expansion draft going into Wednesday, and there'll be a lot of aftermath of that come Thursday. But Friday is going to be a really interesting day as well, and I'm fascinated as to how this all shakes out, considering no OHL games this year, a very few games in the Western Hockey League, some young players moving to other leagues or sometimes overseas to get an opportunity to play. And how this all shakes down and how different people's draft boards is going to be, will be very interesting by the time we get to next Friday. And that was a big part of the conversation with Shane.
Yeah, if you missed it, go back and check out our conversation with Shane Malloy. I probably put that as a separate feature. I mean, he talked a lot about the Jets organization, Logan Stanley, Cole Perfetti, some good stuff about scouting. He's got some great insight and always looking to improve. We'll have to have him back on maybe after the draft. And we got to talk to him about, I know he does the EA Sports player ratings too, so I've always wanted to ask him about that, but never have had the opportunity. So at some point we will do that.
Yeah, and always fun chatting with Dusty. The Edmonton situation is interesting, and I think, Winnipeg and Edmonton having, we just know so much about these teams after they went at it in the first round and played each other so many times this season. Be a little bit different next year, going back to our normal neighborhoods and the regular divisions. But I got to tell you, I mean, the Keith trade has been one of the more interesting hockey conversations over the last few years with the reaction to it online and elsewhere. And of course, once we get through the expansion draft, I mean, the one thing the Oilers have this year that they haven't had in a long time is a significant amount of cap space. And we certainly think that we'll be looking forward to, as far as the cap space, that Ken Holland will certainly be a player when it comes to the free agency on the 28th of July. All right, everybody. We are just hours away from tee-off at Royal St. George's for the Open Championship, the final major of the year. We always love talking to our next guest, but I tell you what, this is a perfect time because I don't know if there's been anybody hotter than Geoff Fienberg, who has been nailing W's for the last couple months, including a couple massive ones, a 3-digit underdog in Cam Davis. So let's welcome Geoff in and see what's going on as we get ready for the Open Championship. How are you, buddy? Great to talk to you again.
Good times. House always happy to throw down with you.
Hold up, Reem, I don't know if you've got Geoff muted, but I cannot hear him.
Oh, I just heard him.
Interesting.
Us?
It's not
You got
coming
me?
to me.
Do you not see him?
I see him, but I just don't hear him.
I can hear him. I'm not sure. Maybe Geoff just exit and come back in.
Yeah, Geoff, if you wouldn't mind, just pop out and pop back in. That's a strange one. Anyways, super fired up to get Fienberg in, doing some great work for Odds Checker, and the spot that you can always find Geoff. Maybe the most entertaining podcast on the internet, along with our pals Pat Mayo and Tim Anderson on the Pat Mayo Experience each and every Monday. And if you think the golf was good, just wait till we get into football season. Fienberg, can you hear me and can I hear you? Beautiful. I can hear you now. I can hear you. We are all good. I was just giving you props. First off, I mean, we always take a lot of heat when we make bad picks, but what a month of June for you, my friend.
You just gotta, I don't know, take it as it comes, Huss. Normally, most years for me, I can just sort of be consistent with it. I like to bang out like a winner a month, but this year's been weird. I got real hot at the start, then went like as ice as I've ever gotten, in terms of picking a winner with Mayo, and then like you come right back and find like 4 in like 6 weeks. So I don't know. Now I'm excited. I'm going to meet my quotas for the year again. So good times. And hopefully, haven't hit a major yet this year, so would love to bag one.
Well, it's time to do that. And listen, as things continue, I mean, obviously you're doing all the stuff with Pat and the Mayo Media Network. You're doing your Prize Pick show, working with Odds Checker. Fill us in on where all the content's coming, because I have a hard time keeping track these days. You probably do too.
I do my Monday show with Mayo. It's our first look at the board. Tuesday and Wednesday, I have quick videos with Odds Checker. Now my Tuesday videos are going to feature, Rick Gaiman. And then Wednesday and Friday nights, Wednesday night and Friday afternoon, FTN Daily, Geoff Fienberg show. I believe that is everything. Yeah, I guess it is a lot.
Well, it's awesome to see, and it's great to have you back on this program. So let's get to it. Royal St. George's, John Rahm, a heavy favorite. Listen, I think we all realize that John Rahm could absolutely win this tournament. But are you surprised that he's about half the number of the next favorite on the board?
Even though there's the case where he could have easily won 3 tournaments in a row, including the U.S. Open, if you want to give him a memorial, he putted himself to a loss last week in Scotland. I mean, yes, I'm still in agreement with you, Hustler. We've all sort of waited for this John Rahm season to be upon us. It is here. He is the number 1 player in the world. Well, not actually, but he's the best player in the world. But I'm still not willing to concede that his gap should be as big between him and the next guys on the odds board. That being said, I'm scared of him and I'm scared of the weather.
Well, we'll get to the weather in just a second. Rahm was 8-1. I'm just looking at the cool bet numbers. It's now at 9. Earlier in the week, Brooks Koepka, Xander Schauffele, Jordan Spieth, Rory McIlroy, and Dustin Johnson were all 20-1 at the same time. Since then, Brooks has dropped down to 16. Xander and Spieth are at 19. Rory was at 24. I see that's Rory and McIlroy actually and Justin Thomas have just flipped. Justin Thomas this morning when we were doing Lock Shop was 22. DJ and Rory were 24. Now JT is at 24. Rory's at 22. What do you make of the fact that the number's been dropping on Brooks, Xander, and Spieth while Rory, DJ, and Justin Thomas are going the other direction?
I'm not that surprised. I did expect during the week or at the start of the week that Brooks and Spieth would probably see the biggest handle. But I think I'm in agreement with you, Hustler. Like those 24-1s that Cool Bet was throwing out there with Rory yesterday, that would be my super elite of choice. Now, I didn't end up betting Rory at that number. I had a little fun with Rory last week to bump him up. But if I had to make a move on any of those guys, it really would be Rory. I think, the long-term trends support Rory for the week, but I think Rory's in a really good place to have a great week, unlike probably Port Rush. He contended deep into the U.S. Open. He's got his win this year. But I get it. I see it. Everyone is expecting Jordan Spieth or Brooks Koepka to pretty much win this thing. That's the consensus pick. And then Xander is obviously taking his heavy steam that he normally does take. I am quite surprised at how forgotten Rory has become. A bit surprised at DJ being passed by, because he's at that age and he's been through the ringer and we've seen him come out of it. And I'm pretty confident he's going to find a way to come out of it with a claret jug, as he's perfectly seasoned in his career. But Rory would be the guy that I'm now shocked is really fallen behind the pack this week.
Yeah, well, I mean, when we were doing the picks early on, I mean, I'm all in on Brooks, and I was lucky enough to get him at 20-1 earlier this week, and we've seen it. Then it was 19, then it was 18, it was 17 yesterday, and now we're seeing 16. So, I mean, you want to talk steam, there obviously is some on Brooks, but when I just saw Rory McIlroy, the way that he's played this year, it seems to be coming around, and the Open Championship where he's won at 24-1, to me, the value, if you wanted to look at the best value bet of those super elites, to me, it was Rory McIlroy at 24. And even at 22, I could make the same argument right now.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Huss. And he's won out of miscuts before. I'm not really reading too much into anything that happened with him in Scotland last week.
Let me ask you about Pat Cantlay, because he's a guy that, has had, pretty good Open Championship runs in the past. I believe he was 12th before. I originally tabbed him as a top 10. Is there a chance Pat Cantlay holds up that trophy at the end of the weekend in your mind?
I have bet Pat Cantlay. I bet Pat Cantlay on Monday afternoon at Coolbet at 39-1. That was good enough for me, Hustler. This is a form player who I believe is on just a nose hair behind Xander Schauffele in overall ceiling ability, in my opinion. Double the number. Patrick Cantlay, when I came in and got it, as I mentioned, form player in form, be it the PGA Championship through Muirfield, the US Memorial, the US Open. It just continues for Patrick Cantlay. He would perfectly fit that long range trend of the win this year, all those previous accomplishments, except he doesn't have that top 10 in the last 5 years at the Open. You mentioned he's got a 12th. Those numbers are so, I can flimsy those around all I want, Huss. 12's as good as 10 to me. That works. I mean, let's pretend we're in a world where in 3 years from now, we're discussing a US Open and someone says, yeah, but Bryson finished 26th in 2020, in 2021. Be like, I don't know, man. The guy was leading on the back nine. You got to put a 20, you got to put an asterisk beside that 26. So you can make it work however you want. I'm choosing to take that long range Open Championship trend and finding a winner and flimsying it a little to allow Cantlay in there. On the same note, Rahm doesn't have that top 10 either, but I think he has a T11. So it's anything you want. You have no idea how those tournaments finish to get those numbers.
Well, let's talk about the 30s. This has been an area that we've hit winners in the past. You've been very successful in. We have a group. 32 is Tyrrell Hatton and Victor Hovland. 34 is our guy Cantlay, along with Oosthuizen and Bryson DeChambeau. 39-1 is Fitzpatrick, Morikawa, and your guy, the bad guy, Patrick Reed. What do you make of the 30s?
So it is, Tyrrell Hatton, where I guess you could say I started my card. I scoured the internet through the weekend last week. I found myself a 45. I smashed it. Woo! I am worried it's one of those books where I don't know, please I'll get paid. I don't know. I'll just say that. You have to pay in Bitcoin. So you know what I mean? It's a crazy world out there. I much prefer I had a 45 on Hatton at Coolbet. Let's say that way. I feel a lot safer about the how everything would play out per se if Hatton were to win. But I love Hatton this week, and I got myself in a weird spot, Hustler. It's Hatton at the same number as Bryson, 90 out of 100 times, Bryson, better player. But this is the one instance where the numbers don't make any sense, but Hatton is the play here. He's won 2 Dunhill Links championships. This might be one of the truest form of links golf in the Open rotation. He's seasoned, in my opinion, for this moment right now. So Tyrrell Hatton, I do love, and Patrick Reed, Razor Ramon, and the Claret Jug. Pat Mayo this week when doing the show, we like to have fun a lot, as you know. but never did he once say that, like, you've got to almost put your never has he once said you got to almost put your modeling aside to a certain extent at the Open Championship and factor things like guts and strokes gain, magic beans. And while we know Steve has the magic beans and will make them from everywhere, Patrick Reed has an ability to make his own magic beans on the fly at times, per se, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But we know he's got that intestinal fortitude that an Open Championship would ask of. If it plays as hairy as some say, you know, Patrick Reed's a guy I always want to have some of my money on.
Well, speaking of it playing hairy, I mean, what do we expect from this course? And certainly if the winds are blowing the way the forecast says, it's going to be an incredible challenge for 4 rounds.
I mean, it's hard to keep up with the weather. It's changing consistently. You know, at the moment, though, it does look like, well, you know, it's hard to project out that we're going to get I just love when we get integrity in the weather waves. You know, it's how do you get integrity out of the weather? I just want the same weather for all 4 rounds of waves of Thursday, Friday, and even through the weekend, per se. It's changing on the fly. If you haven't made outright bets, I'd say wait as long as you want to until you go to bed and keep checking that weather. I'm expecting it to play pretty hairy, Huss. I think that's the plan. They can make some maniacal pin placements on these greens. So I'm expecting, I still think some of the best players in the world can play to their best. 8 under, 9 under winner. But so that's what I would be expecting.
Hey, beyond that group, in this, you know, the mid-range, 40 plus to 80, I know I don't need to twist your rubber arm on a 49-1 on Tommy Fleetwood. A lot of people talking about Grace at 64, considering the season that he's had and, you know, his history at these sort of events. But of the longer shots, who's getting a touch from you?
Yeah, so, you know, no secrets there. I'm in on Tommy Fleetwood. Tommy Fleetwood at 49-1 to me would still be an amazing bet, a great number. Just watching an interview with him after his round Friday at the Scottish Open in horrible conditions where he shot 2 under. And the announcer, the interviewer is like, how are you smiling? He's like, I love it. You just got to embrace it. The good, the bad. So, you know, that's all part of it. A guy who's ready to take it on a chin and keep going forward. He's got great finishes. That second at Portrush to Shane Lowry. Do I wish he's probably had a more consistent year? Absolutely. And above that, Huss, I believe Coolbet is showing what, 64-1 on Daniel Berger. So that's a guy
69
69-1 on Daniel. Like, essentially, let's just call it. You know, I did good enough in math to know I can round that up. 70-1 on Daniel Berger. He's a guy that checks all the boxes in terms of driving, ball striking, scrambling, an ability to putt, a quality finisher, a guy that's been playing cash games in Florida wins against seasoned tour pros since he was a young cat. I love Daniel Berger, actually, at 70-1. I've been burned by Berger. I think I've bet Berger in every single major this year. So those would be guys that 51 above who do have my money. And I can't forget mentioning, you know, I'm a sucker for it. I've abandoned Finau this week, Huss. It's back to Ricky Fowler for me.
Oh, Rick. Big Rick. Where is that? Rick's at 79 right now. And I'll say this, and I'll give you guys a hat tip just before we go. The legendary Danny Willett pick a few years ago. I'll never forget you guys on the show. It was right around the Super Bowl saying, this guy's 150-1 and he's the 12th ranked player in the world. I mean, this just doesn't make any sense. And lo and behold, the 12th ranked player in the world is Harris English, who's been out there at 80-1 this week. And listen, I know there's probably a lot of things that suggest it's not doing it, but the minute I heard that magic number 12 from the Willett bet, I went straight to Harris English.
Love Harris English this week. I just stacked too many bodies ahead of him that you know were just sort of out of shekels for me. But in sort of like that Patrick Cantley, it's like Patrick Cantley at double the number is how I even said it to Mayo this week. Like, I'm getting that smooth, totally, in my opinion, complete player that can, you know, if it's tough as nails, he's a great scrambler and tough player. If it gets to a scoring situation, we know English has that ability as well. Checks so many boxes. So, yeah, I think that's a great number out there for Harris English. I just caught Harris at 50, so he's made me smile. Him winning would still make, I'd still enjoy his face.
Hey, Fienberg, you guys going to be doing a cut sweat show on Friday?
I don't want to commit to anything. Mayo might have these like priorities he's kind of mentioned to me. I'll be live, worst case scenario, 2 p.m. on the Geoff Fienberg show. I'm still working the behind the scenes to see if we're going to be active for Friday afternoon. But if not, just hoping for a great open. Let's see those guys not even wanting to open umbrellas because it's too windy, right?
Yeah, good point. Follow on Twitter if you're not already at GFienberg17. And just like Dustin Nielson, I before E, make sure you get it and all the content will be coming out. I look forward to talking Chiefs and Chargers with you in a month or so, pal. But
I believe it.
Enjoy the final major. Yeah, you got it, Betty. Take it easy. Thanks so much.
You the man. Love you, Huss. Love you, Remis.
Right on. There is Geoff Fienberg, great friend of ours. And man, I'm excited for this tournament tomorrow. But it was great to have Geoff on the program. We pretty much did the Cool Bet lines. The only thing that's going on right now is the Open Championship. So get to Cool Bet. If you have never played before, use promo code WST for a 100% bonus up to $200 on your first deposit. And ride with me on Brooks Koepka to the Claret Jug. All right, while we've been having some great chats with Shane Malloy, Dustin Nielson, and Geoff Fienberg, it sounds like the new restrictions have come out. Remis, I know you've been following this while I've been chatting with these dudes. What have we learned? Fill me in. Give me some good news.
We have good news, Hustler. Good news is here. It seems like the government's approved a plan for the Bombers to have 100% capacity at the opener on August 5th. I'm trying to, manage this and read all this stuff. So I think we're on our way to that, assuming I think everyone needs to be fully vaccinated to attend, and you have to show your proof of vaccination. You did that at the Valor game. The other big thing, indoor gatherings. You can have 5 other people in your house, which I've already, made plans with my 5 other people to come over for whatever viewing parties I want to do, or video gaming, or whatever you need. Nice. I see we're having a heat wave. It's going to be tough to be outside going forward. But if you want to have people outside, 25 people you can have in your private outdoor backyard. So no longer counting heads up to 10, which is what we were doing. We had to have a bouncer at my outdoor bonfire last weekend. And then
what about bars?
We had to
what
have
about bars?
Bars. I don't go out anymore. I have a kid. I didn't look, but I'm pretty sure restaurants are up to 15%. Patio tables still up to 8%. Businesses up to 50% now. So I'm looking forward to going to Costco again and having a smaller line.
Bars. Let's focus on the important things. Nobody can. You'll be able to have
up to midnight.
8 2-year-olds over for your gathering in your backyard. When are we going to be able to get together at a BP lounge and watch a game? It sounds like that's right now. I guess it'll be 50% indoors. Patio capacity now 100%, which is awesome for all the outdoor venues in and around here. And yes, finally, the damn 10 p.m. closing time is done. So what did you say? It's midnight now? They're not going to give us all the way to...
And I think, because the only COVID can only get you after midnight. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows that. The other one is, I think they had that rule in where you had to order food to get a drink. I think they got rid of that.
That's good. That's archaic.
Effective Saturday at July 17, 12:01. So I guess Friday night after midnight, I'll be having some friends knock on my door. I got a mini fridge in the basement.
Big
ready
gathering.
to go.
Big gathering.
Big gathering of the maximum 5 people other than who live in the household. So
yeah, but then at 12:01. 20 people will be waiting outside and will join you. You can get a full rager at 25.
Oh, here. Do you want me to read these? I got him on chrisd.ca. He's got a nice summary. I hate when people post these screenshots. Like, I can't read a screenshot on Twitter. It's impossible. Like, on my phone. I have to, zoom in a million times. But, public
Chris D's always got the goods.
It's got a nice big font that I can read. Public outdoor gatherings, maximum 150. Retail businesses, 50% capacity or 500, whichever is lower. Restaurants, licensed premises, food court, 50% capacity. Outdoor maximum remains at 8 for tables. Some stuff about opening hours extended to midnight. Oh yeah, VLTs may operate with other restaurant bar rules applying 2-meter distance. Only households are fully vaxxed. People sitting together. Yeah, the requirement to purchase food when ordering alcohol no longer applies.
VLTs are on. Well, that'll be good. There'll be a lot of restaurants. Win City will finally open. It's essentially turned in. I mean, there's a lot of places that literally just depend on their VLTs, and if the VLTs aren't on, they're not going to be open.
Yeah,
so that certainly will mean a lot of people coming back to work. That's for sure.
Yeah, a lot of stuff. So a lot of stuff. ChrisD.ca, he's got it, and obviously, Free Press, Sun, all those sites. But I think what we're interested in most here at this channel is for the Bombers.
Yes.
And great news for the Bombers fans. Large-scale outdoor professional sports or performing arts events may operate with capacities up to 100% after developing an approved event plan in consultation with public health. So it sounds like, Brent Rusin also said the Bombers event plan has been approved and fully vaccinated fans can attend games at 100% capacity on August 5th. So that is official. And I kind of repeated myself, but we do need to, get that information out there.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's great news. That's awesome for the Bombers. I think that's exactly what they were hoping. Hopefully it'll be a little bit of a nudge, maybe to some people that haven't got their shot yet to do that and help us hopefully move out of this. And I guess for the Jets too, I had to laugh yesterday though, Reem. People were actually getting mad online about the Jets not coming out of a plan ahead of Manitoba Health. Like, what were they expecting? If they went and did that, it'd be like, you can't do that without. I guess people wanted them to commit to having all vaccinated fans. Listen, if those are the rules for outdoor stadiums, I kind of think that that'll be the rules for indoor stadiums. But can we at least wait till there's something official to complain about before spending a lot of time losing it online?
Yeah, people were messaging us. I saw people getting mad online on Twitter about the Canada Life Center putting their plan, and basically their plan was, we're going to wait and see what the government says. And to be honest, I think every business, they want to be able to operate like they were before. It's all up to public health right now. So I'm not going to be up in arms. I do see people in chat saying, they're maybe a bit nervous about attending a full event, indoors, potentially unmasked. I think that's a normal feeling. But before I get up in arms about, anyone's plan, I want to see a plan, not, we're going to wait and see what the government says. I did see, Chris Abbott from Coolbet, he put out a tweet. He says, hey, for everyone, there who's, concerned and wants to proceed with caution, I just went to Vegas. I spent a lot, the entire time unmasked in large gatherings. I came back, I tested negative, and he's fully vaccinated. So I think maybe that, calms down whatever concerns you may have as we move forward into this new world, Huss.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, listen, I think I've done my part. I got the shot. Now I'm ready to go. And yeah, there'll be some people that will continue. I don't want to say live a life in fear, but it'll be freaked about some things, and they'll be able to govern themselves accordingly. But I think this is great news for the community, for the businesses here in Winnipeg, and certainly for football fans. I mean, I'll tell you what, Reem, a month or 6 weeks ago, the thought of potentially having a full house for the CFL opener for the Bombers seemed like a pipe dream. And, whether they'll get to that full house, I'm not entirely sure. But I can tell you, I think there'll be a lot of people that are going to be very much excited to get out to that football game. And the fact that, everyone will be double vaxxed and you can pack them all in, I think is great news, especially for the Bombers and the rest of these CFL teams that desperately need some ticket revenue to put in the coffers after bleeding red ink for the last 18 months.
Yeah, I can imagine, what a emotional game that will be. Wade Miller said they wouldn't raise that banner until, they can do it in front of a full crowd. Well, home opener against the Ticats, season opener, August 5th. I think it'll definitely be a pretty emotional moment for a lot of people, just reflecting back on, this last year and a half and how, finally we're getting back there. Maybe not fully back, but, the CFL's back, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm seeing some people in the chat, Leighton Janice, saying you have to show ID with the Q card, I believe. That's exactly right. And I'll just say, and I would assume this will be the same thing. I went to the first soccer game last week when fans could be allowed in for Valor FC. And that was basically it. Ziff and I walked up. He had the tickets on his phone, but you have to have the QR code, which obviously has your name on it. It they put a thing on it, basically like they'd scan a ticket. It comes up with the green check mark. You're good to go. And you obviously have to show your ID that you are that person. It was simple. It was easy. It was quick. And it was great. And then once you got in, you could have a mask off, sit in the stands, and enjoy a beautiful night out. And I know there'll be a lot of people looking forward to doing that coming up on the weekend.
I also, Huss, I got that app that scans the barcode on my phone, and I'm going to be making sure anyone who comes over to my house, I have to give them appropriate scan.
There's a scan. You can actually download it yourself and do the scanning?
It's on the Apple Store. Yeah, it's on the Apple Store. You can scan whoever you want. So
hey, just back to the chat. Nelson Patno just played the best plays on DraftKings as you win, but XX Revolution said, I have entered the DraftKings. How do I play? It's real simple. Just reserve your spot and then draft your team. You're picking 6 golfers. Each guy has a salary. Your salary cap is $50,000. So, you can't just pick the top 6 guys. You won't have enough money to do that. But you pick your favorite players. They acquire points. The big thing is you want to get your guys to the weekend and to make the cut. If a bunch of guys, you miss the cut, you'll have a tough time scoring. But if you get 5 or 6 of 6 through, you'll have a good chance. And the app's amazing. You can follow your scores throughout the weekend. Golf a little different than the normal DFS, which happens on one night. This is over 4 days. But yeah, lock in that roster. Your guys will tee off tonight and follow along and play with us for the weekend. A lot of fun. I can't wait for this final big golf major of the year in a contest stream.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So someone said final golf. Isn't that the PGA Championship? That happened back in May. So, yes, final golf major. We are looking forward to. So play along with us on the DraftKings. And I'm just seeing,
join in. I'm just seeing Mike from 18 Over Par Pod. This is Mike's first DFS. Looking forward to it. You will love it, especially being a golf guy. It's super, super fun. Just $3 entry. There's still a couple spots left. If you want to join us, certainly get in on that. Now I'm Andrew Haleko, looking forward to heading out wearing my WST t-shirt. Thanks, Andrew. That's awesome. Yeah, if you weren't aware, we do have a store now. Remember, maybe drop one into the link, but if you just go to winnipegsports.com and click on store, you see the t-shirts, the hoodies, and much more. We've got some koozies coming, some hats coming down the way, but right now, both the t-shirts and the hoodies have been awesome, and we really appreciate everyone that has stepped up and helped us out, and even better, wearing it around town and letting people know what we're up to here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily.
I have heard from a lot of people who, rocking the mug in, meetings or wearing the apparel saying they saw the logo, and other people's like, hey, what's that? I didn't even know that was a thing. So there are people, I know we have had a great community come out since day one, but there are people out there that don't know. So, wearing the apparel people have told me that it's helped bring awareness to our cause. Of talking about Winnipeg sports.
And that's why we wanted to get this out. I see Andy Steven got a hoodie and a t-shirt from the store. They are awesome. Little too hot for the hoodie right now. Yes, that's for sure. And Mitch has said there's 6 spots left in the DraftKings contest. So if you want to get in, just pop in, reserve your spot, and you can spend the couple hours stressing over your picks. Just make sure you get them in. You save your roster before 11 o'clock tonight. Because tee off, of course, 6 o'clock a.m. overseas means we're going to have major championship golf all night long if you want to change the sleep schedule and get to it. The other thing that we can do tonight, Remo, without any Major League Baseball or anything like that, we'll focus in on the NBA Finals and, of course, live racing at ASD. I had a couple better days, but it did not go my way yesterday. Did you pull any W's?
Oh yes, I hadn't won. I hadn't won in weeks. I'm not back. But I had 2 wins, so I pretty much broke even. I have a problem with my head. Pretty much broke even, and so I didn't take any L's yesterday. So I won 2 of my 5 bets. So if you're listening to me, I'm back, fully back. I'm ready to take some more. I got 5 picks ready for tonight. I'm kind of spreading it out. I've got some, simple bets, but also some other ones trying to hit a big one.
Excellent. Okay, well, why don't you go with yours, and then I'll follow with mine for tonight. Don't forget, you can get out to Assiniboia Downs in person right now in the Terrace Dining Room. But with what we're hearing with the Bombers, I'd imagine by next week, we'll be able to be in attendance there. We'll clarify that and have more information for that for you Monday, Tuesday here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. But for tonight's Wednesday card, Remo, where you going?
Here are my picks. Race 3. I'm taking an exacta. I'm going for it. To finish first, Freezing Jimmy. To finish second, Eviscerator. Heavy favorite, that Eviscerator. And with a name like that, how could he not be?
I like that. I was just staring Eviscerator down right now.
Eviscerator, I think, is the pick, but I got a slight upset on an exacta. That I have to finish first and second in that order. Race 4, Horse 3, Spites Force. I need him to place. And I did hit one of my place picks yesterday, so I'm on with these places. Race 4? Race 5? Race 5, Horse 7, Call Me Captain. I want Call Me Captain to place. And what do we got? Race 6, I got a Quinella, Shades of Victory, and Mr. Benz. In any order, first and second. That's my that was my when I was more confident. I put 6 on that one. And race 7, my last pick, horse number 5, Drizzy to win. And I got what do I have on that one? Like $4. So all these
Drizzy
bets, $4. I got 1, 6, and 1, 2. So there you go. Those are my picks.
All right, I'm just looking. Race number 4. Are these like all rookies that have never raced before? I'm just looking at the program, and I don't think any of these have gone in. Well, I'll definitely pick a couple names.
Barely Regal. That's maybe the best named horse right there.
I'm on Barely Regal. In fact, I will tell you right now, in race 4, I've got a Quinella of Barely Regal number 5 and Don't Blame Coco. So we'll stick a toonie on that one. No idea how that race is going to be. Back to race number 1. I'm going to go with a 1-3 Quinella, Storm Stride, and Union Smarty. Into race number 2, we're gonna get the triactor box in a little early. Wit Loves Tacos is number 2, Shelley's Dream is number 3, and Triple Live is number 5. We're gonna triactor box that for a $6 wager. I'm gonna go with your guy there, Eviscerator, and we're gonna put $5 on Eviscerator to win. And we've got in the race number 4, which is all rookies as far as I can tell. As I mentioned, we'll go to Don't Blame Coco and Barely Regal. So we'll put 3 on that. We might actually make the Eviscerator bet a little bit more, but those will be the picks for tonight. Hopefully we can get back into the win column and, of course, get back to the track coming up next week. It should be awesome. Remo, before we go, any thoughts on the NBA Finals tonight? It is nice that this normally most dead day of the sports calendar, due to the pandemic, has an NBA Finals game, and I got to tell you, I'm loving the Bucks to get back in this series. I was originally Suns in 4 guy, not anymore. Watching what Giannis has done the last couple of games, going for 40+ in the last 2 games, he's putting a team and a city on his back. I think this series gets evened up tonight and goes back to the desert 2-2.
I want the Suns to win, but I'm a fan of series going long and being exciting. So they're Bucks. You look, they're favorite by 5. So they're at home. Giannis, maybe he's had some time to recover from that knee injury, and sure, go with the Bucks. I do like the Suns though. I also have a lot of Suns on Top Shot, and all those players will get a badge on their.
Oh yeah, give us a quick Top Shot update. By the way, how are the investments going right now? What's happening with the Top Shot market?
There was it's crashed really hard, but I still enjoy collecting the cards, the NFTs, and I know that I have a Chris Paul, so he'll get a special badge indicating that they won the championship. So I'm hoping that Phoenix wins. I got some Chris Pauls, some Devin Bookers. I think I got a Cam Johnson.
Got any Giannis?
I don't have any Bucks. I don't have Giannis, so I might have to go find some.
Buy low on Chris Middleton right now. He hasn't had a very good series so far, but maybe you could get in him. Drew Holiday potentially as well.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh yeah, and BA Split. I meant to mention this a couple days ago. Shout out to Rod Black's kid. Yeah, Tyler Black. son of Rod Black, was the 33rd overall pick by the Milwaukee Brewers in the draft. And Rod's a great friend of the program. We'll have to get Rod on, do a little bit of a proud dad episode, Reem. Certainly we'll get Rod to talk about the upcoming season of the Canadian Football League, but I imagine he will be more than happy to put the proud dad hat on for a minute and talk about the fact that his son, I believe, was the top drafted Canadian in the draft this year, going very early in the second round, number 33 to the Milwaukee Brewers.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And we need some new young kids in baseball. They've kind of rocking out the last generation. I know there's a couple other Canadians selected as well, so definitely exciting.
Well, the other one I should mention, shout out to Tristan Peters of Winkler, Manitoba. I tweeted this out earlier. But yeah, 7th round selection, 20th overall by the Brewers as well. Tristan Peters. So great to see a young man from Winkler. I guess he went out to, I believe, Southern Illinois playing. But anyways, great to hear his name called. And it's interesting, Remo. I don't know if you watch much of the Major League Baseball draft, but I was surprised just to see the way it was broadcast this year. I mean, the draft was always something that happened in the middle of the season when games were being played, and you just sort of get a report of this guy got picked. But it was nothing like the NFL, NHL, or NBA draft, where it was really sort of an event, and they're trying to create one going forward.
Yeah, they're trying to make. I know the MLB draft's a bit different because these guys don't come into the league for so long, and unlike NHL, NBA, NFL, where they can make an immediate impact. So I saw they're trying to improve it, trying to get people more aware of these guys, and I think that's a good thing. And I know I want to. We talked about the Bombers opening before we go. A lot of people asking about the Goldeyes, and Andrew Collier, the Goldeyes GM, just tweeted out he's thrilled for the Bombers staff, players, their fans. They get to celebrate the banner raising. The Goldeyes await the opening of the border, so their team and visiting teams, so they can have a full house at Shaw Park soon. So we're kind of waiting for that as well, just to quickly switch topics.
Speaking of getting the WST crew together, we're going to do something at Assiniboia Downs. We'll get out to a bar sometime for a watch party, and I will commit to you all right now that as soon as we are able to get into the ballpark again and find out what the rules are, we'll get something together for Goldeyes baseball, maybe meet out on Craft Beer Corner, and get a bunch of tickets together if people want to maybe join in some sort of a group. That would be so much fun. There's a lot of things that I've missed that we've all missed. Goldeyes baseball and nights at the ballpark are right at the top of the list. So, man, that would be great news. But again, as Andrew mentioned and talked to us earlier last month on this program, a little different for the Goldeyes right now when it comes to coming back because, of course, all the teams will be coming from the United States. Now, you hope that they've got the vaccine uptake. That may be problematic. But the bottom line is the Goldeyes want to get back here as soon as they can. And I have been told that if that border was opened up and they were allowed to do it, I mean, they literally would be able to turn that around right away, get the team here, open the doors, and play ball at Shaw Park. And that is another great bit of news today, Brimo. Although, again, we still need to hear more about the border. But I'm certainly hoping that around the time that the Bombers kick off their CFL season on the 5th of August, we may very well be able to also head down to the ballpark downtown and see the Fish play for the first time in 2 years.
Yeah, we're on our way. That would be very cool as well. So, things are happening. Hopefully we continue on the right track. I know I've had friends, come in from Ontario and start to book plane tickets because you don't have that 2-week quarantine anymore. I can have visitors in my house, more than 10 people in my backyard, restaurants opening. I haven't been to a restaurant, Huss, since January 2019, I think. Eating inside one. Yeah, I haven't eaten. The last time I went out anywhere, for a meal, I guess I went to Rumors Comedy Club in May of 2020. So over a year. But, it's been a while for me. So I'm looking forward to having some celebratory indoor dining pretty soon.
Well, it'll be nice. I mean, I've been out quite a bit. I'll pop down to some of the local spots and try and support them. And the other thing is, to be honest, I mean, especially now with all the changes that have happened personally and professionally over the last year, I mean, I feel like I'm just in this place 24/7. So usually I'll get to the end of the afternoon, finish up some stuff after the show. I just need to get out and go somewhere, maybe see another human. So it's been nice popping by, whether it's Boston Pizza, Confusion Corner, when City will open. Patios right now are paying. They're still partying at Bar Italia after Italy's win on the weekend. So it'll be great to get back together, whether it's outdoors or indoors. I guess the bottom line is, and this is what they're telling us, if you get your 2 shots, you're going to be able to do most of the things that you enjoy doing beforehand. And I won't get into the politics of all that. I'll just say, hey, whatever, that's the way it is. I got mine, and I can't wait to travel. I can't wait to hook up with people from outside of my household, inside a BP lounge, and I sure as hell cannot wait to get back to IG Field to see the Bombers and Valor, and the ballpark to see the Gold Eyes, and fingers crossed, the now newly named Canada Life Center for the Winnipeg Jets going forward. I mean, really great news for each and every team. Gold Eyes obviously still waiting on the border, Remo, but it seems like we're coming out of this right now. And a big part of that is just how well Manitobans have done in taking up the uptick of the vaccine, because, of course, many of these restrictions that we're getting right now were supposed to be like a month down the road. But the way people have responded to the challenge is the reason why we're going to have a better summer than I think a lot of people thought.
Yeah, isn't that what the government's saying, Huss? Best summer ever. Woo! I think pretty sure that's their
4-3-2, one great summer.
I think that's their marketing slogan. So hopefully we can do that. I'm hoping. I guess summer is going. Although Huss, I was looking at the weather. I know we usually wrap up around now, but like it's supposed to be pretty hot going forward. So everyone stay hydrated. And put on sunscreen.
Well, dude, we're going to be heading out to Aikens in those boats in the lake at 35 degrees. I think we might be talking to our guides to maybe work a little bit of a different schedule, going in the morning and in the evening, because, it does look like it's going to be absolutely insane. We could all use a little bit of rain, but a very little bit this week. But still, I know people in the ag business need a heck of a lot more. And honestly, just to cool down and get going on. Hey, one other Gold Eye note, and thanks to Andrew for reminding me of this. Remember, we were talking about this a lot offline, and I don't think I mentioned it earlier this week. Speaking of the Gold Eyes, and, for many people, it's sort of out of sight, out of mind because we haven't had them here to play. But I'll tell you what, I really hope they are ended up coming back, because the Gold Eyes on the weekend signed former Major Leaguer Bud Norris to add to the rotation. Of course, we saw him was a high-level pitcher for a long time in the majors. I was sort of stunned that he was available for the Gold Eyes, but we're seeing more and more guys pick up opportunities in independent baseball to try to get back in the doors in the bigs.
Love Bud Norris. He used to play for the Astros, the Orioles, started off as a starter, then was a closer. I love when these former major league players come into the indie ball, as they call it. So that is definitely very cool. Guy has a lot of experience. I think he was a former All-Star closer with Baltimore, because I might be wrong. That's off the top of my head, but I mean, he's definitely a name that is familiar.
I rostered him in fantasy baseball for a while.
Sure.
I mean, I can tell you that much. So, I mean, if he was good enough to be picked up in a fantasy league, he's, listen, he's got a lot of experience there. It'll be interesting to see him. I just hope Rick Forney and the boys of summer are back at the ballpark soon, and we'll have more information on that next week. We'll hook up actually with Andrew Collier and get a bit of an update on the team as well. All right, gang. We've gone a little long. Thanks to everyone that's hung around with us to the end. People in YouTube, you are the best. Glad you were hanging with us throughout the afternoon. To everyone listening on podcast, thanks so much. As always, if you can, rate and review the podcast. Give us a 5-star rating and a little bit about why you enjoy the show. That certainly helps us on all the podcast feeds. And tomorrow on the program, lots more NHL news heading into next week with the expansion draft. Dennis Bernstein is going to join us. We're hoping to potentially talk to Pascal Vincent. We'll see if that works out for tomorrow. And, of course, I'll get you ready for the guys as I'm away on Friday and Monday. Brandon Rewicki coming in on Friday with Remis, and the sports rabbi himself, Matt Leibel, on Monday. And then, man, right back into it. Tuesday will be the countdown to the expansion draft. Wednesday, expansion draft day. Recap of all that Thursday, and then the draft is on Friday. So going to be a big week coming up on Winnipeg Sports Talk, but we're not there yet. Tomorrow, much more on the NHL offseason, latest from Blue Bomber training camp, and more from around the league. Folks, thanks so much to all of you for being with us today, and to our sponsors, Royal Sports, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Little Brown Jug, Not Auto Court, Boston Pizza, Breezy Bend, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, Assiniboia Downs, and coolbet.com. If you haven't already, grab one of those final spots for the DraftKings contest. Good luck, and we'll see you tomorrow right here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Have a great night, everybody.
Oh my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.